Hi, I'm going to present on the topic called Redefining the Defined, a retrospective into cultural landscape, a case of Mukkollupadu village in the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. And this work was basically taken up by myself, Srinivas, and Lakshmi Vishaka from School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, and which was published on March 2019. So let us start with the abstract. So we are trying to attempt to validate the thoughts of Hayom's minds and also tries to establish a relationship between the evolution of built form as a response to the needs and culture and also assess the role of physical deterministic factors that shape it over the years. A literary premise is established preceding the analysis of the settlement, focusing on Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. And this study is being conducted at two levels, both macro and micro level, which gives an in-depth understanding of the fabric at the settlement and the tissue level and validates the essential relationship between man's needs, life, and built forms. So the keywords are architecture, built form, culture, and human needs. So let us start with the literary premise where we try to understand various definitions of vernacular and then we have tried to define what is cultural landscape. So when we talk about vernacular, Rappaport describes vernacular architecture as a reflection of the user in defining a place. Al Sayed also defines vernacular as something native to the specific place, which is created without the help of imported components and processes, and possibly built by individuals who occupy that particular place. As appropriately defined, vernacular is a region specific manifestation of authenticity. So let us try to define cultural landscape as defined by UNESCO, which is the combined manifestation of the works of man, nature, which illustrate the evolution of human society and settlement over time, influenced by physical constraints or opportunities presented by the natural environment and of successive social, economic, cultural forces, both internal and external. So we are trying to understand Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. As everyone knows, like the, the pyramid shows that we have the deficiency needs and we have the being needs. Deficiency needs, which talks about physiological needs, safety needs, love, esteem, and then we have being needs, which are beauty, understanding, knowledge, self-actualization, etc. Then we try to understand Rappaport's view and ideas of built form, and he describes the relation between man and environment as religious and cosmological. Environment is regarded as dominant and man is less in nature. Symbiotic, man and nature are in a state of balance, and man regards himself as responsible to God for nature and earth as a steward, and exploitative, where man as a creator, modifier, and destroyer of nature. So, when we talk about culture, these factors vary broadly from place to place depending on beliefs of people, and thus built form takes variations in the various parts of the world. So, this clearly shows that the cultural landscape needs to be analyzed not only on the basis of the surrounding physical factors but also the lifestyle and the culture of the people. So, let us come to the case study which we have undertaken, situated in the state of Andhra Pradesh in Krishna district, a village called Mukkollupadu village, which was traced back around 150 years back. So we are trying to understand the phases of development as described by Mumford. So initial phase, then maturation of development phase, and the saturation or decline phase of any settlement. So then we try to validate the Maslow's theory in this element. So when man moved to what is the village right now called as Mukkollupadu, as a basis of choosing area of settlement. So the origins of the village were at Devana means that is a river. So any settlement, if you see in the history, started near water as a basic requirement, the rivers, the ponds, the lakes, etc. So this is understood as a physiological need. So the water body acted as a nucleus of this development, and with this help of this resource, man sought to farming, which helped him to satisfy hunger. Then he obviously needs a place to stay, a place where he can be safe. So then he needs a form of shelter, which is safety. Then gradually the houses have started growing, the population has started growing. Then you have belongingness and love. And when man established himself in this manner, the need for self-esteem led to social stratification in his community. And the community which had mixed social strata till then split and dispersed into what are now the six hamlets making up the village over the years. This clearly shows how man's physiological needs led to the evolution of built form and spread into a settlement. So the evolution of the village over time is analyzed as based on the effect of externalities like man, climate, and animals. Sequentially, as observed from the history, it is observed that the establishment of territory due to internal and external conflict led to overall structure of the settlement. Adding on to the attributes, further culture shapes it to the form it attains. So now you could see how it has started as a small cluster along the small water body, then how it has grown into different levels, and finally the right side image shows the congregation of six hamlets, which has grown in a subsequent period of time. So as existing right now as a combination of six hamlets, which is surrounded by various agricultural lands. So now we're trying to look that into original character. So we have physical determinist factors which include climate, soil, food, resource availability, minerals and characteristics and location. Like the resource availability of water is seen as because it is formed around the water body. And being an agro-based economy, the people had chosen to stay near this river where the soil is fertile for agriculture. Then the settlement saw its origin and growth majorly due to these two factors. However, the pattern of the settlement assumed dispersal due to the cultural persistence among the people. So, maturation or development, the evolution of is clearly justified by regional characteristics, which has already been explained in the previous slide. So now we have possibilist factors. Culture is observed in Mukkollupadu. Culture, as observed in Mukkollupadu, is based on culture prevalent in the place, the people's definition of God, their occupations, and their lifestyle. So this settlement is an expression of dispersal due to the most evidently prevalent marker in the society, the caste system. The dispersed character of the village fabric suggests the prevalence of social strata on all levels in the life and living of the people. So you could see like these are the existing settlements in the village. So you have Paturu, Golagudam and Kotturu. Then you have Madigagudam, Nehru Nagar, which belongs to backward classes. So you could see like as the general Indian caste system, which describes caste as a segmentation of society into groups, which was being observed in Indian context. The hierarchical system classifies the most privileged strata occupying the top of the pyramid based on the occupation and lives of their forefathers lived. Segregation is often observed as to the location of upper caste being in the center of the settlement and the lower being restricted to the periphery of the village. Endogamy, that is the restrictions on marriage as to people getting married to people who belong to their caste, and in certain areas restrictions prevail as to people not only getting married to people who belong to some other caste. So restrictions on any kind of liberal choices is a marker of Indian system which prevails even today. So this was observed in all villages and in most of the villages in Indian context, and which was also observed in this context of Mukkollupadu village. So there are dispersed and concentrated settlement patterns, which we have seen. Concentrated settlements are again classified into two types. The whole settlement is considered as a setting for life, and the dwelling is merely as a more private, enclosed, sheltered part of a living realm. Dwelling is a whole setting for life, and the settlement where the village or city is regarded as a connective tissue, almost waste space to be traversed and is secondary in nature. So now you could see the different settlements, how they have grown. So we have tried to understand these settlements, organic settlement pattern and concentrated settlement pattern. Then we have moved to defining the structure of the settlement. Uh, Mukkollupadu as a concentrated settlement of the second order is due to culture, due to differential status of various sects and differential status among the opposite sex. So the culture of the people is reflected in the lifestyle and occupation of the people. Differential status to different classes has led to the dispersed pattern, and this is due to the confinement of public realm on immediate exteriors and rear of the house for men and women respectively. So now we could see religious and cosmological where environment is regarded as dominant than man, symbiotic, man and nature are in state of balance. Man regards himself as responsible to God for nature and earth, as a steward and custodian of the nature, and exploitative. Man is modifier of nature, then creator, and finally destroyer, which was, we have discussed this in the previous slides. So now you could see how the settlement have been from the initial phase, how it has moved. So we have tried to show, so based on the learning from the Rappaport's theories, etc., try to understand how it has started and how various factors have been affecting, etc. So this clearly states the growth and development based on the externalities and how the evolution and growth has taken place from of this village. Then we have tried to move into detailing, like trying to talk more about festivals, trying to talk about the other aspects of the details, which will move to the next slide. So now the relation between individual to group and group to land is more evident in these unconscious rural settlements. So the general attitude of respect and reverence of the site means that one does not browbeat or rape it, but works with the site. So buildings fit into the landscape and express this attitude through choice of siting materials and forms. So these forms not only satisfy cultural, symbolic, and utilitarian requirements, but are so much a part of the site that it cannot be imagined without the dwelling, village, or town. Such qualities also reflect the presence of shared goals and values, a clear and agreed on purpose and an accepted hierarchical structure of the house and landscape, as well as a direct response to the climate and technology. So these the forms are also a clear reflection of needs, leading to the direct and intuitively clear feeling and rightness described above. So one self-conscious, lack of pretension, or desire to impress, direct response to way of life, climate and technology, use of modern and variations, method of building, attitude towards the nature and landscape all play a part. So we have also tried to go more into micro level details. So we have tried to understand how cultural divide is being happening in the society. Then we have tried to understand the lifestyle, how they start early in the morning, what do they do at different time periods, etc. So all these are basically we are trying to understand uh, the lifestyle, which also has an impact on the build form. So where do they sit? And they so there are some spaces called Arugu where they sit and chat and discuss with the family members and with the visitors, etc. So at what time they come and where do they prepare their food, where do they store, etc. So all these are basic. Where do they have the livestock area? So all this becomes an interesting factors in the lifestyle of the people who live in villages. Then we talked about the architecture as an expression. I think the more we could understand through these sketches and the drawings in the next few slides. Mm, so we'll just try to move to architecture as an expression. So this gives a beauty of the one of the houses in which we have done the case study. So you could see how different activities were divided in the site. So the spaces, the activities are basically not restricted to interior. So it is more or spread to the, so the kitchen is outside, the livestock area is outside, you have open, semi-open spaces outside. So it is basically divided, the interiors and exteriors. There's no difference of internal and external. So everything is basically the sketch shows how different activities are being placed in, and there is a mix, there is a balance, and there is a proper flow of activities which takes place, and there is a lot of influence of their occupation, a lot of influence of their culture, their beliefs, their customs. Everything becomes part and parcel of the build form which has been evolved based on these. Based on it is there's no architect for it. So the 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 builder or the person who is deciding itself becomes the architect, and thus the term vernacular has come out. So you could see another interesting space. Now, whether the house is small or big, so most of the activities happen within the multi-purpose room in the uh, in single room or two rooms, and then all the other activities like livestock, like granary storage, farming, bathing, etc. happens outside. So whether it's a single room house or a double room house, so you could see some of the images which shows the built with mud, built with thatch, etc. And where you could see the vehicles, the livestock, etc., which becomes part, and you could see some spaces where the grains are stored. Then another interesting house, which is the circular in form, where the kitchen is projected out, and you have a small veranda where you try to. So these are not exclusively built with the high-end building materials. Everything is locally available. Everything is built within available near the village, and which is made with the simple technologies, etc. So, but it's pretty interesting to live in. So you could see a simple small house, but still all the activities are being focused. So another house which shows which is more of rectangular form. So you have slowly people started moving into modern houses because of various schemes by the government organization. So this is one of the modern house which is seen. But still, people tend to live outside. People tend to spend time outside rather than inside. Uh, and then you have the sloped roofed houses like this, where you have again the activities which are divided into different spaces, etc. So this is another sloped roof with the manual tile roofing, and then an extension which is needed, which is made with asbestos roofing. In all the houses, kitchen becomes an important part, which is segregated outside. A toilet is outside, and you have a granary storage outside the main house. So, so these are some of the functional depiction of spaces in the typical houses. You have a palm thatched house, then you have the drying grains space, then you have the roofing system with it, then you have the spaces for livestock, then you have the storage for grass, etc. Then symbiotic relation between man and nature and architecture of rightness. So the symbiotic relation between man and environment is not only reflected in the culture and tradition of the people in the village, but also on the built form level. So the onset of change, that certain aspects of behavior and the way of life are constant or change very slowly. And that replacement of old forms is often due to the prestige value of novelty rather than the lack of utility or even unsatisfactory relation to the way of life. So, this is a quote by Rappaport from House Form and Culture. So, Mukkollupadu is a rural settlement, thus stands as an appropriate example in establishing a link between neat culture and will form. Man's need paved a way to shelter, man's life paved way to the form it gained, man's existence gave it life. So, architecture is thus not defined only as an art but as an expression of the inhabitant. It stands a clear example of the phenomena where necessity made man define shelter as a means of survival. Gradually, culture, apart from physical factors, shaped it into various forms as perceived by various eyes. Some forms of culture defined their settlement in direct relation with the cosmos, while some chose to stand as a custodian of what was bestowed to them by God. These varied perceptions have led to various interpretations of built form. So, this paper has thus tried to establish a link between need and culture in shaping architecture. Thank you.